Uganda's Chief of Defense Forces, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, warned the delegation from the European Union that they were playing with fire. This after the delegation visited the National Unity Platform headquarters, having meetings with top opposition leaders, of course, party head Robert Kyagulanyi, the Secretary General, among other key officials. Ultimately, what we saw was this delegation going to Gulu to visit the president's brother, General Saleh. Today, we put context to what is happening. Some people have described it as souring tensions between Uganda and the European Union, but specifically Germany. To put this in context, I'm privileged to be speaking with political analyst and senior journalist Timothy Kalyegira back on the hard questions. Tim, thank you so much for coming back on the show. We really missed you. Everyone has been asking me, bring Timothy back, bring Timothy back. So thank you so much for making time.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I know that you've been closely monitoring this. I would love us to start from where all this began. Just recently, 2 days ago, the UPDF released a statement cutting diplomatic military cooperation with Germany specifically for what they described as subversive activity, that officials at the German embassy and Germany was involved in subversive activities. This is brewing diplomatic tensions between the two countries, including Berlin responding to those accusations, saying that they are not true. It's been a build-up. So I'd love to hear your thoughts from where all this starts. How do the people, the delegation from the EU end up in Gulu? What happened in Gulu? And what happened with the high command of the UPDF making a decision to cut diplomatic cooperations militarily with the UPDF? So I would love to hear from you. The build-up.
Well, I think to answer your question, the build-up obviously is just around this immediate episode. By the way, what's been cut off, at least by the UPDF, it's not, it's military cooperation, not diplomatic relations. There's a difference.
Yeah, of course.
But see, once again, you're not too sure, is that the UPDF as an institution? Is that an order from the Chief of Defense Forces, Muhoozi Kainerugaba? In which case, a week from now, it might be like overturned. It's hard to know. But yes, it's been routine over the last 20 years that these Western diplomats, especially those from the European Union, traditionally visit both sides of the political divide. So in the early 2000s, they would visit the Kizza Besigye group and other politicians, and then they also visit President Museveni. It's just been routine for them. It doesn't show any favoritism. It doesn't show interference. It's just a courtesy call. They also have visited media houses, like the state-owned New Vision, have visited the Daily Monitor. So it's basically routine engagement with significant players on Uganda's political landscape. Nothing, out of the ordinary.
And they had actually visited the NRM political party before.
Exactly. So it's, as I say, routine. Visit the ruling party, visit the leading opposition party of the day, which is NUP now. Before then was the FDC. So there's nothing untoward about that. What causes all this, of course, is the new factor in Ugandan politics and public life called Muhoozi Kainerugaba. That's just the difference. In other words, had there been no Muhoozi, either as Chief of Defense Forces or even as the president's son who speaks the way he does, then this would have been a non-story. It would have been a page 4 newspaper story and so on. So that's just the summary.
Yeah.
Much ado about nothing.
I mean, we saw this delegation visit the National Unity Platform. The CDF, gets these pictures of them visiting NUP and tells them, you're playing with fire. Be very careful. We're closely monitoring. Did this catch you by surprise?
No surprise, because as I've just been saying, the visits are routine. And then the outburst by the Chief of Defense Forces, that surprised me even less than the visits. Why? Because this is the way we've gotten used to A1 Muhoozi Kainerugaba speaking. That NRA Museveni mentality. opposition is treasonous, it's anti-government, it's anti-patriotic, it hates the country, it's illegal, it's a terrorist organization. That sort of mentality.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it should not be any news that they visited them. As I said, they engaged with the leading parties and also visited even media houses and have engaged with other parts of Ugandan civil society.
Yeah. So as that week unfolded, we had audio leaks of what was described as conversations between a top German envoy with Robert Chagulanyi Sentamu leaked. What do you make of that?
Well, that's the recording. You mean what's the substance of that discussion?
Yeah.
What were they discussing?
I mean, they were discussing about, I think on the other side of the call, they were saying, we are behind you, we're here to support you, we are in conversations with our partners, the Americans. I think that was the time, conversations are happening to encourage Bobi Wine, I think at the time when there were torture allegations, and yeah, it made rounds on social media.
Indeed, yes. So now you can see the tone. It would be, I can see from the point of view of Muhoozi, why that would sound, like suspicious. But then let's say if you visited the NRM, what would you say? If you're a diplomat, you would say we're partners, our historic relations go back decades. We applaud the sisterly relations to the countries, that sort of thing. The thing you speak at an independence occasion, these sisterly relations. If you're speaking to the opposition, what would you say? You'd also give them a sense of support. We recognize you, we support you, we believe in a free press, we believe in a free political space, the flourishing of democracy. This participation helps build Uganda. That's that positive talk you'd expect. So yes, it's tapped and then it's leaked, but then it's that's what it be. So when it's a one-on-one, the impression is almost like they were conspiring over something. But let's say if it wasn't one-on-one at the NUP headquarters, what do you think that they discussed? What do you think the delegation said? That's what they would have said. We recognize you. We thank you for courageous stand and all this. Without a healthy opposition, democracy isn't vibrant. If they visited a national newspaper, what do they say? We appreciate the work that you do. It's an influential paper. The media is the fourth estate. That sort of diplomatic nicety is what you'd expect. So once again, nothing untoward.
Yeah. Well, it turns out that they didn't take it lightly, because what we saw was the delegation from the EU going to the center of power. And
the second center of power, which when I was here last time, I told you was the effective state. And as you saw, even that video clip, the question, of course, becomes who recorded that video in Gulu. It was recorded by somebody at the front near the main, the platform facing the diplomats. And but you could see the German ambassador. He said something. If you saw the clip, he said something about, and please don't tell me that Norbert Mao, that's the means of justice, has condemned this. We want to see you condemning this. Yeah. So that seems to have been, that shows that prior to that, General Saleh, who is the president's brother, whom I call the deputy president of Uganda, or whom Andrew Mwenda calls the vice president of Uganda, had been trying to argue that, yes, but essentially the Minister of Justice has come out with a statement. And then the head of the European delegation is saying, yes, but that's not what matters. He's saying we know Uganda better than to go by official ranking. That's why they go past Minister of Foreign Affairs, go past everything else, and they go straight to Gulu, because they know the reality of power in Uganda, which of course tells you they also understand the dynamics of power in Uganda. So yes, that's what happens there. And as you see in the video, General Saleh is caught on the defensive. He's trying to explain, and you can see from his body language, he seems to be saying, you people are putting me under all this pressure, but then what can I do? How can I please you? How can I give you the answer you're looking for? If you want me to condemn the young man, quote unquote, I can, but then he's an autonomous agent we can't control. I can condemn him right now, I can apologize, but I don't know what he'll tweet next. And he was quite right about that.
And he was saying he's not part of the official NRA. somehow, I think he mentioned, is not part of the Ugandan army in a way.
In a sense, yes. So you can see now, but obviously, I mean, when you hear a General Saleh, everybody who knows Uganda, who is not a 5-year-old child, who knows the last 25, 30, 40 years of Ugandan history, of course knows Saleh is an integral part of Uganda's, not just the military, but also the political and the economic system, basically. I mean, we have discussed this before, the last time we were here. When Muhoozi Kainerugaba is made a general, who is it that basically is not his uncle? Yes, in his characteristic, he's dressed the way I was dressed, but it was General Saleh. It was not the Chief of Defense Forces, because everybody in Uganda knows the unstated fact of who is in power. Anyway, like I said, the last time we were here, we discussed this. We can't go back into who is the real power behind the power in Uganda. We do know that.
Yeah.
So the Europeans went rightly to where, if the other one, the head of state, is busy on his country tours, then we shall go to the second in command, who essentially, once you've spoken to this second in command, you really have got the official ear of the state, which in this case is State House. So, go on.
So, Tim, if you watch that video closely and read the emotions in the room, the tone that the German ambassador used to communicate this came from a place of, we are not comfortable with what's happening and how we are being treated as the diplomatic corps. We are not happy with what's happening in Uganda in terms of the torture in the room, and they're reporting to Saleh. But General Saleh's response sounded like he's stuck. He doesn't know what to tell them. What do you read?
Because that's the truth. He's stuck. He does not know what to do about Muhoozi Kainerugaba. You might remember in that first year of his 48th birthday celebrations, when continues with all these tweets of his. Then in December, must have been about like December the 23rd or something, you might have seen that photo where Muhoozi and Andrew Mwenda fly in a military helicopter to Gulu. You remember that episode? Supposedly for General Saleh to speak to his nephew. And the question, of course, is why is it General Saleh to be sort of like doing the damage control with Muhoozi? Why is he the counselor? Where is the family? Where are the parents? In us, under normal circumstances, both from a military hierarchy point of view and also just, in terms of family, it should be the president. So that's telling you all you need to know. Basically, the President Yoweri Museveni, has tried his best with his son, Muhoozi Kainerugaba, and as happened to King David in the Bible with his rebellious son, Absalom, he now has just given up. That's the answer.
Yeah, and
he's lost control of his son. The family has lost control. And as I said on X not too long ago, if you go through Muhoozi's timeline, you will not see a single member of his family ever liking or retweeting those posts of his, which tells you only. So the first family is split that much.
Yeah,
just that. These tweets and these views by Muhoozi are autonomous. Essentially, what's happened in the Uganda government now, especially what you might call the deep state, the center of power, is it's split into two. So there is the official government of Uganda, ruling party NRM, headed by President Museveni, that official structure of the Uganda government. Then there is this strange semi-autonomous unit within the state of Uganda, which theoretically should be under the main hierarchy of the Commander-in-Chief President, NRM, and downward. But because of the peculiar nature of this person called Muhoozi Kainerugaba, being the one who's tweeting what he's tweeting, and being the son of the president, and being part of a family that's running Uganda, which has the power basically in its hands, you're now in a situation where family tensions and family dysfunction equals national dysfunction. So now, the old advice we've always had, never do business with your relatives, because if your sister cheats you, you can't jail her. So now President Museveni is faced with a situation of a rebellious head of the army who is his own son. He can't prosecute him, he can't arrest him, he can't kill, he can't do anything. That's the crisis we're facing right now.
Yeah. In that room, if we can go back, and I would love to get your thoughts. Andrew Mwenda, according to the video that we saw, stands up and challenges the diplomats and says, look, you can't preach that to us if you can't preach it to yourself.
Yes, but then Andrew Mwenda he's not the best reference for power. Yes, he gave a view, as did many people. Don't interfere with Uganda affairs. Who are you? Double standards. We've had all this before. Since independence, all these quote-unquote Pan-African leaders condemning Western imperialism and everything, and then only to discover later Swiss bank accounts have their resources. So I wouldn't take Andrew Mwenda's view seriously. It's a view, but it's not consequential to our discussion or consequential to the direction of Uganda.
One would argue that he's always with General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, and therefore he reflects off the energy and the position.
Yeah, but then he himself, he told us the beginning of the year he was going to launch a podcast with Muhoozi Kainerugaba. Has it ever happened? No. When Muhoozi in March 2022 announced he had resigned from the army, suddenly, out of the blue, although I know the reason why, but anyway, I think he was sacked, but he says he resigned from the army. Remember, Andrew Mwenda goes to find out, is this true and all this and such. In other words, many people around him have thought that there would be voices of reason, voices of restraint, voices of counsel, and they've discovered he's living in an insular world. That's the answer. So in other words, Andrew Mwenda is now a general purpose, what can I say? He's a spokesman, everybody from the Rwanda government to the RDF, the Rwandan army, to M23, to the Roperela family, to the BDF. He's just that. So when you become a spokesman for everyone, then you lose your efficacy. So as I say, I wouldn't take that seriously. The key thing is just days later, the video comes out on the 23rd of May. 3 days later, the evening of Monday, the 26th, a tweet by General Kainerugaba, I was going to say General Muhoozi, which most Ugandans say is actually General Kainerugaba. The tweet saying, out of respect for my uncle, my great uncle, Saleh, I'm going to stop talking about the Germans and I think Bazungu, as he said.
In fact, he said in his tweet, and I can read it right here. He says, out of respect for my great uncle, Afande Saleh, I shall not mention Germany or Bazungu again. I want to apologize to Afande Saleh if I disobeyed him in any way. Nisame Afande, which means I'm really sorry.
Yes. But just think about it. Just think where Uganda has gotten to now. That somebody in charge of the army, somebody who is educated King's College, Budo, St. Mary's, Kisui, Nottingham Universities, Sanders Royal Military Academy, is apologizing not for his actions, and he's not quoting anything about the law. He isn't retracting his attacks on the German diplomat because of the law, the constitution, protocol, and all this. It's because he realizes he's offended his uncle. You can imagine where Uganda's state is now, that it's now basically a family thing. If he did not feel he had offended his uncle, then national affairs would be put in jeopardy. Just think of how ridiculous this current NRM state has become. Really think about that. Because uncle has put me under pressure, then I won't do that anymore. That's now how power has been personalized, and that goes back to the point I was just making earlier. When, as I tried to explain to you the last time we met, by centering power around his family, President Museveni solved this question of military coups in Africa in the past, where you have these well-trained officers, but they're not loyal to you personally. So that's where the military coups, the Bokassa, the Samuel Doe's, and all these happen. But then your relatives, because they're loyal to you, are unlikely to rise up against you. That's okay as long as they're disciplined and they're national, they're sober. What happens to them when they become kind of like, insolent, when they basically think they're above the law? Then you can't do anything. Mm-hmm. So that's the impasse we're facing right now.
Yeah. We'll come to that because I have a very interesting follow-up question to that. I'm still in Gulu and trying to read into the room. David Purcell stands up and challenges and said, even if we are in our own struggle, we're not allowed to torture our own. And General Muhoozi Kainerugaba did not like that. He went to his ex and said, there is this traitor called Purcell, and his days are numbered somewhat, just to paraphrase what he said.
That traitor, quote unquote, is, yes, the former Director General of the External Security Organization. That's Uganda's Foreign Intelligence Service, Uganda's CIA or Uganda's KGB, so to speak. So he's not just an ordinary traitor, he's not just an ordinary person. So the question now becomes, at some point when Andrew Mwenda is going on and on attacking these Western diplomats about Gaza, then David Purcell says, yes, he's seated to the left of General Saleh, and he essentially casts short Mwenda and like really dismisses his arguments and says, yes, but you can't be condoning torture. There's just no justification for that. Now, that, for me, was the most significant moment in the whole video and the whole event. Because if you know Uganda's structure, it is basically the first family is the government of Uganda in many people's minds. Forget the pretense about protocol and hierarchy and Speaker of Parliament and for first Deputy Prime Minister and whatnot. We take it as the first family government within the government. When you go to General Saleh's home in Gulu, all the more so. Saleh himself is also deep state, really the man who runs the show behind the scenes. What Nicholas Biwott used to do in Kenya under Daniel Arap Moi. Under normal circumstances, Purcell should have been being like a Mwenda. He should have been playing to the NRM State House Muhoozi Gallery. He should have been saying, you Western diplomats, we do the, in fact, in our place, Karamoja, you people left us, underdeveloped and all this and such, divide and rule. He'd have done all that normal Pan-African talk to essentially dismiss the diplomats. Who are you to talk to us that way? Don't you know where ABC? For Purcell to make a deliberate point of shutting down Mwenda and asserting, no way, we don't condone this and all that, in Saleh's home in Gulu, one, shows you some people in Uganda are beginning to read the mood. They begin to see between the European Union delegates in Uganda, the diplomats in Uganda, and the Western establishment, and this NRA establishment, I'd rather be on the side of the European Union. In other words, Purcell read the mood in the room, and of course, as a former head of intelligence, still has contacts nationally and abroad. And I think on balance, it was, you look better speaking for Uganda and condemning the Muhoozi talk of torture in the basement.
And that would get him punished. At least according to the reaction.
Yes, according to that reaction, and that he would know, even without waiting for Muhoozi to react, he would think it would not go down well with General Saleh, whose home you visited, please remember. So for you to basically weigh the options and the consequences and boldly criticize in no uncertain terms Muhoozi's behavior means something. It means the tide is beginning to turn against the Museveni presidency.
Yeah.
And that gives the Purcell types and many others behind the scenes were not coming out in the open, that feeling of, yes, but we're nearer the end than the beginning. We're nearer the height of Museveni's depth of Museveni's power than the height. In other words, I am safer in the hands of these diplomats than this government. And as you can condemn me, criticize me, but the weight of power, the weight of forces, the weight of everything puts me in a better state than you. In other words, yes, you can react and attack me, but I know you want to arrest me. And two, in fact, you, Muhoozi, are more likely in the next 1 month, if you continue like this, to come under travel ban. And as Purcell saw all this. between Muhoozi and I am on higher ground. Even though, of course, this is the CDF and whatnot. That was a telling moment for Pulkol, part of Uganda's security establishment.
Maybe he was speaking from somewhere.
That's what I'm telling you.
I mean, he's also not happy with what's going on.
Okay, yes.
As a Ugandan.
Many people are not happy with what's going on, but they always keep their cards to their chests. In other words, you know what's going on is wrong, of course, but then, well, this is their system, they're in power, they are in absolute control of the state.
That you could speak up.
You are in the home of the effective number 2 in Uganda's military and security and economic establishment. When you decide to speak out against the nephew, essentially you are withdrawing your support from that NRM Raktura establishment to what you call the broader Uganda. In other words, you are beginning to read that the tide of global opinion, the tide of Western support is drying out from the Musevenis. And you are coming out as the moderates.
Yeah.
You're nationalistic, you're a former head of intelligence, you're a patriot, but the unstated story is Uganda is bigger than the Museveni family. But for you to have the confidence to say it right now, which Pulko could not have said 10, 15 years ago, shows what we now got to see. Even Muhoozi himself retracts his statements.
Yeah. Ultimately, what we saw, of course, I saw a targeted attack on Pulko, with some people saying he used to share fake intelligence. At the time, he was director ISO, and, a string of online trolls.
The usual things you'd expect, yes.
And then ultimately, we saw General Muhoozi Kainerugaba apologizing to Saleh, which you've mentioned about it, and now sort of paving a way forward. But where does this leave Uganda in terms of its diplomatic relations with the EU?
Well, Uganda, the republic, the member of the African Union and the United Nations, Uganda, the state, remains in principle on good terms with the European Union and the West broadly. Where does it leave the Museveni government or parts of the Museveni government is the question. So what it is the two-layered reality. They'll continue funding projects in Uganda, medicine, poverty alleviation and all those things. They will continue engaging with the Republic of Uganda, and they'll also continue engaging with the formal structure of the Republic of Uganda. So Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, that sort of thing. But then where does it leave the core of the Museveni power center? It then lives in a situation where, in their thoughts now, it is one more barrage of attacks by Muhoozi, and he's now persona non grata in Europe, travel ban. And I think strongly that trip to Gulu was not to ask General Saleh this question, what's wrong with Muhoozi? What's wrong with the nephew? Can't you people do something? No. It was, they already see the problem. It was to say, we are planning to take action on Muhoozi. And don't tell us we did not warn you. Don't tell us we did not try our best. Because remember, he had earlier made similar threats against the US ambassador to Uganda, giving you 40 hours or whatever, 72 hours to leave. And of course, he never left. So now they've seen this build-up, this CDF who has this temerity to attack all these countries that fund Uganda, like I mentioned on Twitter, since Ugandan troops went to Somalia in August 2007. The
EU has been supporting.
Not supporting, they're the funders, the real Ministry of Defense.
So does this military, the cutting of military relations with the UPDF, does that mean could affect that?
Well, the first thing is when the UPDF says they're cutting off relations with Germany, it's not like the UPDF sells helicopters and submarines and Earth-orbiting satellites to Germany. It's not like the UPDF is Germany's largest supplier of infantry tanks. You obviously know what it is. You know that when you make such a statement, the EU switches off their support.
Yeah. So what does, maybe, I don't know, Tim, but I wanted to ask, let's talk about the military cooperation between Uganda and between Germany and Uganda. What is it that is at stake here? Well, the UPDF released a statement that they are cutting military cooperation, this relation between the UPDF and Germany. What does it entail?
What it entails is the fact that since August 2007, when Ugandan troops were first deployed in Somalia, the European Union has been essentially footing the bill for troop presence in Somalia. Right now, the figure is about 2.9 billion euros since then, the last 18 years. So that's quite a lot of money. Plus, of course, other support, the intelligence, that will be more from the US. When they're trying to hunt down Joseph Kony, the US military and the Central Intelligence Agency were helping, with coordinates and such things. The UPDF will admit to this. This is not controversial to say. So, in other words, in the balance of power, Uganda very much depends on the German. And remember, when they say they're cutting off cooperation with Germany, it's like, do they see the difference? Are they confusing the European Union with the Federal Republic of Germany? But that's a separate thing. And now, so in other words, the European Union funds our peacekeeping efforts in Somalia and some other places. The US has already suspended its international aid to include countries including Uganda. At this time,
including significantly reducing their funding to the military.
Exactly. So imagine at this time when budgets are tight, we haven't fully recovered from the COVID-19 lockdown. Think if they cut off, if they actually take you at your word and call your bluff and cut off this funding, then next, you're going to start hearing stories of soldiers going for weeks and months either without payment or delayed payment. And you know what it usually means in this atmosphere of tension and whatnot,
Yeah, but it's bigger because remember, the democratic governance facility was closed, and it was a big basket where EU would place its money to be given to both government of Uganda and civil society.
Basically, you are just
the Norwegians closed their embassy.
I think there might be a few more going to be closed. So where we are for all this bravado, it's just like what we've had before for Idi Amin's and all that. When they tighten their screws and they close the taps, it is Uganda, not Germany, that gets to suffer. And as I said, that then when that military cooperation is the thin thread that keeps them half turning a blind eye to the excesses of the UPDF and these statements by the head of the army. Once you cut off that cooperation and there's no more link between you, then the European Union is free now to be themselves. They're free to be more critical of you. Yeah. So that's why I'm saying that if this continues this way, that the PLU, the unit under Muhoozi Kainerugaba, the political pressure group, had talked about marching on the German embassy.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you next. PLU has been mobilizing nationally to have a peaceful but energetic protest before the German embassy. It has been pushed by top leaders within PLU, Balam, and everyone else, mobilizing to have an energetic but peaceful demonstration before the German embassy. What do you make of that?
It's the same bluff of we are going to kick out the American ambassador, we shall kick you out, and whatnot. Yes, PLU is really just Muhoozi. So once Muhoozi apologizes to his uncle and says no more talking about Germany and Bazungu, quote unquote, then that means the demonstration won't take place. So these so-called PLU leaders are really just hangers-on. They're just shoe shiners and T-boys for Muhoozi. What he decides, what he says, they always echo. You see it on social media. Even when he talks what's really rubbish, they all just thank him and praise him for what he said. So if he now apologizes to his uncle, it obviously means that protest march against the German embassy is called off, and the PLU will just have to save face one way or the other.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. There's no real power in Uganda.
Yeah, but Tim, I was just going to ask, you have a letter signed by the UPDF spokesperson, Kano Magezi, accusing Germany of subversive activities. That is a big accusation. And coming from the UPDF on headed paper, it means that the UPDF has overwhelming intelligence that can incriminate Germany for being involved in subversive activities that can even go to the extent of suspending military cooperation.
Well, okay, let's look at it two ways. Let's go by your theory of if it's on headed paper, it must be serious. By the time you do that, and you know you depend on them for funding, you must have intelligence. It can't just be referring to the trip to the NOP headquarters.
Yeah.
There must be further things. Well, they will have to let us know then what that is. If we were to, for a moment, sound like pro-Muhoozi or pro-UPDF, I could smile and say, you never know, it's possible. Because 40 years ago, at around this time, May, June 1995, the British had a military training team here, training the UNLA, the army at the time. And a coup happened in July, the last military coup in Uganda. And every sign is that the British were behind that coup, as the former President Milton Obote was told by Kenya's Daniel Arap Moi and Zambia's Kenneth Kaunda. So maybe it's possible that one or two Western countries is away from the normal, engagement with both sides and civil society. Maybe there are plans for regime change. You just never know.
Yeah, I mean, Germany.
If they're planning
Germany
that,
has given asylum to
Kakwenza,
to
Stella Nyanzi,
Stella Nyanzi, to now the current Uganda Law Society president.
Isaac
It's not really
Simakade
asylum, but he's there.
Is the exact where before 40 years ago, 30 years ago, our natural asylum homes tended to be like Tanzania first or Kenya. Now that's where we're being abducted. In other words, Germany is now sort of the place of sympathy. What Sweden was to them, 70 family, and many of these NRA people, the Amelia Chambades, the Rakana Rugundas in the 1980s. So as I say, it's possible that Western powers might be planning regime change, and if they decide, then you're not in a very good position. One day we can discuss how, when you keep hearing the CIA was behind a coup in country A, B, C, D, how does the CIA stage those coups? How do the British stage? How do they back the 1971 Idi Amin coup, and yet you don't see British troops on the ground? That's a whole other story. I won't give away.
Yeah.
I won't say it on camera. But
Yeah.
yes, well, if it's true, then you're in trouble. You have to start thinking, if they actually want to cause regime change, then, as I say, with all the advanced technology they have today, the electronic jamming and the other method, which I'll not mention to you, then I guess the Muhoozis had better get quiet and start opening backdoor negotiations to mend fences with the West. Because when the West wants you, as we saw with France and the UK, Gaddafi, years went by, the Lockerbie bombing of December 1988, Gaddafi, sponsor of terrorism, let it go. But when they decided they wanted Gaddafi, you saw it wasn't even the Americans, just the British and French air forces were enough and outwent Gaddafi. So if what the UPDF is saying is true, Lord have mercy on the Museveni government.
Well, the UPDF is a strong army, according to the General CDF.
Of that, what else? Just like
the General Muhoozi Kainerugaba.
Yes, like the way every CEO says our company is doing well and we're excited about the market. Yes, that's what you'd expect him to say.
Certainly, we will take it from the CDF's statement that the UPDF is a strong army. Tim, all this started from the torture of Robert Chagulanyi's bodyguard, Eddie Mutwe, Eddie Sebufu. The CDF posting his picture without a beard, him appearing to be battered and broken. He's brought in court. Give me your thoughts through that, that torture, and the CDF comes out to say, we are just getting started.
We're teaching him Runyankore.
We're teaching him Runyankore in a basement.
as I said, if you're a normal person, psychologically, you're a reasonable person. If you know Uganda's history, if you know what the NRM says, they went to the bush in 1981 to fight. If you know all this about Uganda, what would you expect me to answer you? The son of President Museveni, the head of the Ugandan army under this NRM, that NRA that was supposed to be a disciplined army that ended the dark days of State Research Bureau, NASA, UNLA, the roadblocks and all that. This is the son of President Museveni, not torturing or having Eddie Mutwe tortured privately, and a leaked video or photo comes out and then he disassociates himself from it. No, proudly in the open, proudly doing what people do. During workshops and these, fashion events and sports events, people tend to do these live updates, tweeting. So-and-so has said ABC. And the speaker says Uganda needs to grow more coffee and all that. That's what you normally do with what you call social media updates. It is abnormal to see a person very comfortably relaxed, enjoying to updating the public about torture going on in my basement. Not in Kireka, facilities, not somewhere at the SFC or CMI facilities, in my basement. So that's either in his office or in his home. And that he's proudly letting us know and enjoying the details. In fact, now he's just gone to make me tea. In fact, now I'm told this morning he woke up and I don't know, he's now urinating endlessly. Can you imagine? You think that's normal? You think Moses is normal? Just like I say, what do you expect me to answer? I mean, just ask anybody, do a sample anywhere. Start even from within the president's own family. That's what you're telling the world. Just think what the First Lady is thinking about Muhoozi, or Natasha, or Patience, or Diana, whoever. That's our brother. We, the family that presents itself as a Christian military family, Christian soldiers who fought the good fight. We were God's blessing to Uganda to take the dark days behind us. That's what they present themselves, a prayerful Christian military family. And that's what your son is tweeting proudly, openly, not, as I said, there's no attempt to say you're misquoting me. Why do you say torture? That wasn't torture. We just have him under detention. No, he's happy to let you know. And those who say, sometimes when he tweets, those are just his bad jokes. He then goes online and says, you people who say I'm not serious about what I tweet, who make it seem like I mean what I say. Please don't misquote me. Those tweets are me. Please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I tweet what I'm thinking. What else can anybody say? That's where Uganda's gotten to.
What do you think goes through the president's mind when he sees these things?
The first thing
being
is
a disciplinarian with his history of the NRA and discipline within the army.
Well, I don't know if the NRM itself was as disciplined as they claim, but that's a whole other story. If you go through the newspapers from 86, almost from day one after taking power, they began armed robberies and all these things, not to mention these attacks on Bank of Uganda, Kabale, UCB, Kabale, Fort Portal, Kilembe, to take money, when Uganda had been cut off after the 85 coup. But that aside, what's going through his mind? First, just the embarrassment. You remember when in 2022, when he had to apologize to the Kenyans, at Citizen TV, we apologize. He's a patriot, he's a Pan-Africanist, but yes, I'm wrong about that. You think that was his pleasure to apologize on behalf of his son? Of course, that humiliates him. Then, being the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, just a statement or two on CBS FM by Brigadier Henry Tumukunde, and for 8 years he was under some kind of like house arrest. One or two statements by one or two people, and that's the end. And imagine what Museveni must be feeling. Imagine if that wasn't his son. Imagine if that was just some other army general, chief of defense forces, saying those things. imagine where that person would be. So that's the one thing, just as a father, as a commander-in-chief, as a president, seeing your son embarrassing you, the government, the family in public, antagonizing other countries, relationships that matter. For all Museveni's weaknesses and double standards, he genuinely seems to have this Pan-African thing in him. He really believes in it. He says it so long and so deeply, you can't doubt that that's what he believes. So the very neighbors whom he really has, endeavored to keep close to him in that spirit of his East African Federation, Ethiopian government, that has always been him, this regional thing. And your son is antagonizing these people. That's one. The picture of this son of mine bringing him embarrassment. But at the secondary level now is the security side of Museveni. He looks at Muhoozi's tweets, and I'm sure privately he has thought, what are other army officers thinking? What is the army thinking about that? And being an intelligence officer, being a politician, Museveni knows for sure. Deep in the hearts of that army that's quiet, they're not happy with what's going on. There was a hint of it at the time of the Commonwealth Summit in Kigali in 2022, July, when he returned by road from Kigali, and there was that, what is it, the class?
Standby
order class 1. And that image of, I think, Lieutenant General Wellu had hinted to the president that, the tension in the army over your son's tweets. That's what. So Museveni knows this to be true. He must know it. If he doesn't, I'll be surprised, but he must know it. He must know that every army officer above the rank of major or captain, privately, as they read Moses' tweets, are thinking, if that was me, would I get away with that? No. If I said any of that, if I tried to do a birthday party the way Muhoozi has done it, would I get away with it? No. So now you notice the army is completely quiet. In all this Muhoozi drama, completely quiet. But that's a dangerous sign. When people disagree with that, when people of a certain level of education and consciousness are completely quiet, that should alarm you. So that's what he thinks. Now he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to, he knows what they're thinking. They're thinking what most of the rest of the country is thinking, but now he doesn't know how to come out to them and own up and say what? Say yes. What does he tell the army? We're a disciplined army. We fought to create a professional army. Muhoozi's behavior doesn't reflect the UPDF. Obviously, the next question is, so why is he still the CDF? And then somebody can't go further than that. So he's torn. That's why I think right now, he's now decided to just say pass. Everything to do with Muhoozi, just take to his uncle to deal with. I'm tired of that Muhoozi story. And that's why people now go to Gulu to meet General Saleh. That's why Mwenda goes to Muhoozi to meet General Saleh. It's just that Museveni and his wife just go about public duties, parish development model, touring the country, like nothing is going on in the country. No mention whatsoever about Muhoozi. Even their silence itself tells you the trauma that they're going through. That bit, the quieter you go when your son is behaving, your daughter, children, when your children at home, that son of yours has been, this is the 4th suspension from school, and the school has said the 5th suspension is expulsion. When you come home and find your son there in the middle of term, and you know what has brought him, and you just go and make yourself some tea and read a newspaper and say nothing to your son. The silence of a father who has no more words is where Museveni is right now. So that's it. Muhoozi has thrown a spanner in the works in a way we're not expected. If this expression on Twitter is true, so-and-so has united, some nude video has united all Ugandans, whatnot. Muhoozi is uniting Ugandans. That question you asked about the torture, this thing about abuse of power, driving along pavements, tribalism, favoritism, abuse of power, we don't like it, but it's vague, it's neither here nor there. But there is something about torture that crosses a red line. It feels moral. Torture is something we feel. All of us who saw that video of Kizza Besigye being pepper sprayed in the eyes. Everybody knows what pepper feels like. We've all ever cut onions. We have all ever encountered pepper. All of us as human beings instinctively felt, just the onions alone cause so much pain and watering of the eyes. Pepper spray into your eyes, everybody knows what that would feel like. Everybody knows the sight of Eddie Mutwe with blood, spots on his face. Everybody knows the pain of torture. So Muhoozi is just uniting the country. And then we're going to teach you Nyankore. What do you think people, even Nyankore themselves, are feeling? You saw some of the comments on X. You're going to start creating this hostility toward us. The way Swahili was once associated with the army and torture and roadblocks and brutality, when you start getting our language and making fun of Eddie Mutwe, saying he's learning Nyankore, it's real danger. This Muhoozi is causing his people, his family, and all this. Yeah. And the president can't do anything about it. They tried, as we discussed last, they tried to contain him by removing from this free-floating, semi-independent presidential advisor role he had, to make him the CDF, to pin him down to his desk full-time job. It isn't working. Nothing is working. As General Saleh is saying, even I myself, as Saleh, I'm stuck. Remember when he said, there was also a meeting in Gulu when he was the time he was made the CDF, and said, you remember that joke of his, thank you, it is nice to see you now. He had become something else. The man had become something else. That statement, that was when he was made the CDF. Fast forward later, the man is still something else. Even Saleh is now helpless. The natural deterrent to all this would have been that three-way power balance: the executive, the judiciary, and the parliament, each balancing the other out. But when all these centers of power, the judiciary and parliament, have been weakened, and essentially Uganda just has one branch of power, everything's like under state house power, there has to be something to balance it out. So when you see people, when Amin is overthrown or Bot is overthrown and all these Ugandans dancing, yes, they know that was a Tanzanian army or this was a British coup, but that doesn't matter. We've been deprived. We should be the ones holding him to account. We've been so weakened. So external help becomes our equivalent of the counter, the balance of the state. But many would say, what else can change this impunity? What else can change us from this world where if it's not stopped, there'll be more of those participate? Think of all those people in Noop. Think of this new court martial law in which now we civilians will be tried in the military court. Who wants another 5-10 years of that? So they will say, whatever can rescue us.
Tim, thank you. Timothy Kalyegira, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Welcome.
Well, I've been speaking with political analyst and veteran journalist Timothy Kalyegira, weighing in on the events happening in the country. Thank you so much for watching The Hard Questions as we celebrate 2 years since the show came on air. I'm Solomon Serwanja.